Okay, lightning fast video today, and it is good news. For those of you that have been following this for a while will know that I've had absolute nightmares with high noise levels, and I've been wanting to get my router moved for quite a long time, and just bureaucracy has got in the way, and it's been a bit of a pain in the backside, to be honest, because my internet supplier didn't want to send anyone out because of COVID and the country being in lockdown and whatever. But I finally managed to get my router moved. I had to go a slightly backdoor route to get an engineer out to get it moved. The less said about that, the better. We'll keep that quiet. But I have finally got the router moved, and I've got some on my screen over here. I've got some Lentos plots, and I'll show you that in a minute. But at first glance, it does seem like a good sign. I've got my radio down here looking at the S meter, and we're sitting at a steady S7 at the moment. Now, bearing in mind when I started this process, it was a constant S9, even S9 plus at the noisiest times of the day. So I'd call that a pretty positive result, and I even saw that earlier in the day down at S6. Now, I think I'm always going to have a bit of a noise issue because I live right on the edge of a fairly large housing estate, so I'm going to be picking up noise from other electronics. But from what I can see, it does look like it's had a fairly positive result. We've dropped 2 to 3 S points, so so far so good. Now, in my previous video, I questioned whether or not I could pick up VDSL interference from my coaxial cable internet, and a couple of people told me I couldn't. I thought that the cable was picking up VDSL from neighbouring properties and bringing it in as common mode on the shield, which is the theory the RSGB put to me. And fair play to the RSGB. There's one guy I've been talking to, Steve, I forget his call, so I've got it on my screen down here, GATPA. Steve from the RSGB has been absolutely brilliant. And he seems to agree with me that it's possible that you can get VDSL from neighbouring properties brought in on the coaxial cable. And I also questioned, because there was a question mark over whether or not the different system used on the cable internet, which is DOCSIS, there was a question mark over whether that can be picked up by the Lentos software here, and Steve assures me that it absolutely categorically cannot. And I've actually looked on the settings on my router. You can go into the settings, it tells you what frequency they're using, and I think it was where is it? Have I got the piece of paper handy? The lowest was 394 megahertz, highest was 579 megahertz, so it's up in the UHF band. So what's been picked up on the Lentos software here is definitely VDSL. It was coming off the cable. Like I said, I think it was being brought in as common mode on the shield of the cable rather than actually being generated by the cable, if that makes sense. So let me switch you on to my screen capture here, and I can show you the Lentos plots. So I've got 3 plots here. This one was taken a few days ago before the router was moved. So this is with the router in its old position, all connected up and running before we moved it. And if you remember, each user on the VDSL network will show up as 2 spikes fairly equally spaced. So you got one user here with these spikes, the 2 big spikes, and you got smaller spikes here, so one there would be another user, and another one just off to the side of the big spike with another one there would be another user. So that's 3 sources of VDSL interference. Now this will vary a bit from day to day as the routers swap and change connections around, but basically we've got 3 users there. Now if I skip us forward couple of days later, still got 3 sources of VDSL there, but this is after the after the modem was moved. So I've moved the router, but the cable which runs from the front up the front wall of the house into the loft and across the house and back down outside on the back wall of the house was still in place. So that cable was disconnected and the router was moved, but that coaxial cable was still in place. And again, you've still got three sources of VDSL here. And then an hour, literally just under an hour later, that's this plot after I removed that coaxial cable. So when they came out and moved the router, they just snipped the wire and rewired it at the other end of the house, but left the coax cable in. So I actually removed that cable myself, and this is what we get. Now, what I want to show you, and the most telling thing, is if I go back to the first screen capture. This was before the router was moved, so the router in its old position, and you notice our noise level here. Now, it's difficult to draw definitive conclusions here, but because the Lentos actually scales it up or down depending on the noise level. But if you notice here, we're at, what's that, about minus 17 dB, sort of halfway between minus 15 and minus 20 dB. Down here, this is on 3 megahertz to 4 megahertz, so that's basically your 80 meter band. Now if I go on to the next one, you notice we're down below minus 25 dB now, so that would account for the noticeable drop on my S meter. And then like I say, we go on to the other one, which was taken an hour or so later. Slightly higher noise, but that's later into the afternoon. You know, a bit more noise, a bit more other electronics coming online with people as well. So first glance, I'd say we're looking good. Now, talking to Steve from the RSGB, he's now saying the next thing to do is to see if we can get the VDSL lines for the neighbouring properties rebalanced, which apparently can take quite a while, so I'll let you know how we get on with that. But he said sometimes it makes a difference. In a lot of cases the difference is negligible, so it may help, it may not. This might be the best that we get, but I'd say that's a pretty damn good step in the right direction, from an S9, S9 Plus down to about an S6, and we're sitting on about an S7 now. So I'd say that's a pretty positive step in the right direction. So fingers crossed, we'll see if we can get the VDSL lines rebalanced and see if that makes any difference. But for now, it's based on the Lentos plots and what I'm seeing on my S meter on my radio down there, it's looking good.